A question that you must ask yourself: how does that happen? Why did the Irish have gangs? Why did the Italians have gangs? Why did the Polish have gangs? Why do they always have gangs? Is it because of some genetic differences? No, of course not. It is a necessity. How the Crips gang?
My name is Tyrone White. I'm a former 6'5" Menlo Crip. Some of my rivalries were the blood gangs and the Crip gangs. We were involved in drive-by shootings as well as drug dealing, and this is how crime works. Yeah, of course, I've participated in drive-bys. I've been a victim of drive-bys plenty of times. When you're going against war with one another, there's no winners. Now, you can look at it and say, okay, I shot more of their homies than they shot of mine, or I killed more of their homies or they killed of mine. But both sides are taking losses. So if you both are taking a loss of life, there's no winners. The guns that were used in gangbanging were the 9mm, the 45s, Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun pump, AK-47s, Tech 9s. The first gun that I ever got placed in my hand, given to me as a gift from one of my homeboys, was a 25, a chrome 25, little small 25 with the pearl handle. Had like 6 shots in it or something like that. And as you got older and you learn more about guns and elevate yourself, of course, you get bigger guns. Guns are stolen on the street like dope is sold on the street. You can even buy guns from enemy gangs, because right now it's a business. It's about making this money. They come from everywhere. Now, where they get them from could be from the police force. It could be from the military. You can never be caught what we call lacking or slipping. You got to always be ready. You got to have enough firepower. You are ready for war at all times. From the early 80s all the way up through the mid 90s, those were the years of heightened gang activities. So drive-by shootings were nothing. You could literally turn your news on every day during those years and see a drive-by shooting. I mean, every day. We had a drive-by shooting to where that I participated in. I walked in the house and I remember seeing it on the news. I must have been about 15 at that time. I remember my mom was on the phone and she was like, I'm so tired of these kids shooting one another and killing one another. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, she has no idea that I was just in this situation. She never found out about it, but I just remembered the way that I felt listening to her on the phone, telling her friend, like, man, these kids need to stop this and this is crazy. And there's another situation to where we were getting ready to go out on what they call Sunday Fun Day, when all the lowriders, all the motorcycle clubs, all the car clubs, all the gang members, that's like the one day to where all the gang members, enemies, everybody can congregate in one area on Crenshaw Boulevard. I remember we seen a car pull up to the corner. And usually when you see cars pull up in the corner with no lights or anything like that, you know that's a sign of something that's gonna happen. And all you see was guns come out the window and everybody just got to shooting at everybody. And we all just scattered like ants, just everybody screaming, hollering, running, scattering, because no one had guns actually on their person at the time. One of my big homeboys, he was very known. He had got hit in the face because they shot with a 12-gauge and they had buckshots, but it didn't kill him because they weren't shot at close range. Luckily, nobody got killed.
Toyota Siennas are so goated. Not that it's related to the video, but
the Crips were founded in the 60s and by Raymond Washington. He formed the East Side Crips, which is on the east side of LA. Tiki Williams formed the West Side Crips. And through those two different foundations, different sets start to evolve. Different areas, you know, the Hoovers, the East Coast, the Rolling 60s, the Menlos, all these different sets. The object and the goal was to keep this side of LA safe. But, you know, as usual, things escalated, things multiplied, and violence became, shit happened. When Raymond Washington got killed, that's what caused the division. That's when Crippin became divided between the East and the West, and different things start happening in different subsets. And it just became like a disease. One Crip set betrayed this Crip set. And then it just caused a never-ending feud. Bloods used to be the main rivals of the Crips. But now there are just as many Crips are against one another than there are Bloods. A lot of Crips and Bloods have become allies because they share the same common Crip enemy. For example, the A-Trade Gangsta Crips, they have a peace treaty going on with the Inglewood family Bloods. And that's because their borderline is connected right next to one another. So since our neighborhoods are so close to one another, you got to come through my neighborhood to get home. I got to come to your neighborhood to get home. Let's make this a blood-free zone. No violence. Not saying that we're homeboys or we're just a close hood, but let's keep the peace between this dynamic, between this area. The beef between the 6'5" Menlo Crips and the Hoover Crips, it goes way back. We actually all grew up together and went to school together. We became one of the biggest enemies to the Hoovers because our sets are so close to one another. To get to the Hoover hood, you got to come through our hood. You know what I'm saying? And so for us to get to other parts of the city, we got to go through the Hoover hood. I was born and raised in South Central LA all my life. Had a stepfather in my life that taught me how to be a man and different things. But for the most part, I was raised by a strong single mother. Usually in the Black neighborhoods, when kids that come from single parent homes like that, they usually get caught up in these streets because your mom is out working, trying to make a living for you, provide for you. While she's at work, you're out there running the streets, doing shit that you know you're not supposed to be doing. And that's pretty much how I started it. I was about 10 when I first started hanging around them. I knew them very well. It comes down to, hey, you've been hanging around us a lot. You've been chilling a lot. You from the hood.
I'm missing the point as to why this needed to happen. It's called poverty, abject poverty. He's also describing exactly how it happens too. Single family households that aren't because single family households not born out of like some kind of immorality or anything, but a single family households having only one parent for disposable income and no time for parenting. There's no like shared responsibilities. Also, in a lot of instances, the fathers are in jail as a consequence of the war on drugs. This is what kids get into for many reasons, but partially because they ain't got other shit going on. No community centers, no after school programs, nothing. Yup. And also, no future prospects, which I think is also very important. People rather type than actually listen to the video. No, I don't think it's a issue with like not hearing the video. I think sometimes it's an issue with hearing the video but not agreeing with it and asking a question anyway because you just don't understand the answer in the video.
Just make it official, and making it official means getting jumped in or doing something to be a member of the gang. Can be anything from you fighting one person, sometimes 4 or 5 persons. It's to see how you handle yourself. It's to see what type of skills you have. If you get into one of these type situations, can you stand your ground and hold your own, whether you get beat up or not? You have to know how to fight back. You got to be a monster to be a member of any gang, but particularly the Crips, you better be a monster. The word Crip was really originally meant community, resistance, and progress. It was a way to bring the community, to uplift the community, to protect the community. Of course, they took on a moniker and the appearance of a gang because, according to the dictionary, a group of 5 or more people is considered a gang. To be a Crip, you have to carry yourself a certain way. You have to walk a certain way. But for me, the allure was I loved the color blue, and they wore blue rags. They wore blue jeans. They wore blue belts. They wore blue Chuck Taylors. The dress code for me back when I was an active Crip in the 90s, in the early 80s, it was definitely 501 Levi jeans, creased. I would go buy a can of starch and literally spend about an hour ironing my pants, layering the starch to a point to where before I even put my pants on, I could stand them up. Crips wore K-Swiss because it was.
Is another reason why these gangs form? It's because a lot of people in these communities have no access to the regular amenities offered by the local government, court system, criminal justice system, police. Because remember that we're talking like 80s, 90s, way worse back then as far as like policing. So that disenfranchisement causes, or that disenfranchisement creates a need for community policing, community organizing. They also influence young people, right? No, man. The real influence, it's like what I talk about with Gaza, okay? Not that there's a comparison between Inglewood and Gaza, but like Israelis always project and say, oh, they are learning in their schools to hate Israel. And it's like, no, they're not learning in their schools to hate Israel. They learn to hate Israel when the school gets blown up. And a similar structure exists for gangs as well. It's not the influence of gangbangers being so cool and sick. You can only have this opinion if you're looking at it from the outside. Okay? Especially interesting because like the dude is basically explaining like these gangs, quote unquote, form, okay? These gangs form due to a need for security, protection, community protection in general. Because like in a situation where you're struck with absolute poverty, there's going to be hungry people. And when there's a lot of hungry people, there's going to be crime. And when there's a lot of crime, someone needs to stop the crime. And it certainly is not going to be the mother police. Why is it that like every single first generation historically in this country that has moved into urban areas and urban environments, they've always formed gangs? A question that you must ask yourself, how does that happen? Why did the Irish have gangs? Why did the Italians have gangs? Why did the Polish have gangs? Why is it that they always, especially when they're like recent migrants, why do they always have gangs? Is it because of some genetic differences? No, of course not. It is a necessity. It's not culture. It is a necessity born out of the material conditions that they experience. I'm watching Warrior right now. It's a HBO show. Netflix bought it. The Chinese had gangs too. But yeah, it's just that the reason why these organizations develop is because of the material conditions that the community is subjected to, and that's also of course they do crime themselves when there's no other opportunity for them. So they resort to illegal means.
The acronym. It was actually a disrespectful term towards the Bloods. It was called K-Swiss, stood for Kill Slavs When I See Some. Slavs is a disrespectful term towards the Bloods. If you wasn't a Crip, you couldn't Crip walk. If you wasn't a Crip, you didn't know how to Crip walk. And so to learn how to Crip walk and to actually perfect something like that was like a badge of honor. It's a cool thing. It's when you look at it, the feet movement, the way they dance, the way they do it, the way they incorporate certain moves, along with the hand signs and the hand signals. Words that you Crips usually use, which was part of the lingo, was, of course, cuz. Everything we say would start with a C. If you had to say burger, you say Kurger. You know, if you say you say sitch. It's just different things that you could replace the B with a C, you would do it. And that was the same thing with the Bloods. Anything with a C, they wanted to eliminate it. And it may sound strange, and people might be, oh, that's stupid. Y'all sound stupid. That was our language. That was the way that we talked. We understood it. And that's all that matters.
Someone said the Latin Kings originally was to protect undocumented immigrants, like originally formed to protect undocumented immigrants, which reminded me, and I don't know if this is correct or not. I remember like reading about this, and I feel like I wonder if I'm making this up. Is Democracy Now's Juan Gonzalez, was he ever related to the Latin Kings in some way? Or am I making that up? Or it wasn't, it was Young Lords. Latin Kings started as a prison gang. Yeah. He was a member of the Young Lords, which has nothing to do with the Latin Kings. This is it. Young Lords Party was a Chicago-based street gang that became a civil and human rights organization in Chicago. For those of you who don't know, I am talking about this New Brunswick, New Jersey legend, Juan Gonzalez of Democracy Now! Co-host alongside my other goat, Amy Goodman, so sick. God, they're so cool. God, I fucking love Democracy Now! So much. The War and Peace Report. Yep.
And if you disrespect us and tell us you sound stupid, you might get your ass whooped. Of course, they throw up the C. You know, the C is just, you just take your hands, you make a C with your hands. And now you're set, your actual neighborhood, your Crip neighborhood, like the 60s, they have their signs. The Hoovers, they have their signs. The Menlos, they have their signs. You're going to throw up that sign to represent, to let people know that you're actually
I love chat getting modded because they want to throw up the C.
from that set. You're from that neighborhood. We threw up the M. It was just an M. You just take your hands, cross your, which is just how Ice Cube throw up the W when he's in concert and taking pictures. Snoop Dogg throws up the W. Just turn it upside down and you throw up the M. Gang graffiti is a big part of the Crips. People that are coming in there, they know when they see that on the wall, the Rolling 60 Crips or the Menlo Crips or the 5-5 Crips, they know we're entering this gang. This is their neighborhood. The gang structure is not so much organized like the mafia with underbosses and bosses and stuff like that. We didn't give titles like that. But people automatically knew who the OGs were, who the double OGs were, who the big homies was, and who was ranked over who. The double OG is usually one of the big homies that has put in more work than you can imagine. He's done it all. Killed, robbed, made money, been to jail, you name it, he's done it. Usually 50s, 60s, higher age, that they were around in the 70s, in the 80s when gangbanging really just exploded. They were at the top of their game. An OG really falls, not too much different from a double OG, except that he may be a little younger, may have done a little less other crimes. Then you have some of the OGs that have turned their lives around and they just want to live life, have a family, have wife and kids, and they're getting money, they're making money the legal way. So what makes them an OG is the fact that they're talking to the little homies, to the young homies, showing them and explaining to them how they were able to do this.
There ain't no way you guys made a BTTV norm. Omae wa mo imbeciru. Omae wa mo imbeciru. Omae wa mo imbeciru. Yara yara does.
Street soldier is exactly what that sounds like. A street soldier is going to go out there and put in that work for the OG, for the double OG, for the little homies.
Mr. Bonacheri. Mr. Bonacheri-san.
But just for the setting, period. A street soldier has no limits. He's going to go out there and do what he has to do, no matter what. The little homies are usually, of course, what they sound like. The little homies that's looking up to the big homies. They're going to imitate, they're going to copy everything that the big homies do. And if the big homies is constantly going to jail, robbing people, shooting people, killing people, the little homies going to follow suit at some point. My main thing was always to look out for my big homie, or whoever called me they big homie, and make sure that he was taken care of and vice versa, because he does the same for me. He don't have to, but he does. I started out selling weed in middle school and then moved to crack cocaine.
I'm a chatter that was actually in a gang in the 90s. BTS, Brooklyn Terror Squad, Sheep said we got beat by Greenpoint Bloods. I can't tell if you're making a joke about K-pop or something. Should make fun of someone that has put himself out there? Maybe you should put yourself out there like D. Chepsa.
And robbing. I did robberies. That was my way mostly of making money and keeping money in my pocket. The big homies had the big dope, and they'll issue it out to the younger homies. They'll issue it down to the guys to the next level. And it was a way for everybody, from the big homie, OG homies, all the way down to the homies in junior high school, to make money. The homies in junior high school, they may be out there selling crack on the corners, $5 rocks, $10 rocks.
Greenpoint is the whitest neighborhood in Brooklyn. Was it always? The Greenpoint Crew is a Polish-American organized crime syndicate that operates in Greenpoint and Little Poland, Brooklyn, New York via Google. No, I mean, he said in the 90s.
$20 rocks. The big homies, they move in big way.
Damn, y'all got owned by the Polish gang? That's crazy.
So, ounces.
Yeah, Chatter's thinking Greenpoint now is similar to Greenpoint in the 90s. That's so funny. I don't know if you know this, but Brooklyn wasn't exactly a great place in the 90s, okay? Like, no part. I mean, Manhattan wasn't a great place in the 90s. Like, 80s, and 90s, Manhattan was like basically only becoming a talking shit about Poland. You wouldn't say that in rock law on God. What happened in New York after the 90s? 9/11 really whipped New York up a little bit. It was all uphill after that.
Quarter pounds, stuff like that. The drugs came from a lot of times from drug cartels and as well as the government, believe it or not. I mean, there's a story about Freeway Rick, one of the biggest black dope dealers in history of Los Angeles. And he was caught up in that Iran-Contra stuff with Ronald Reagan, and come to find out that the DEA was supplying him with dope, the same dope that they gave him 30 years for in prison. So, you know, it's like, that's just how it worked. They put it in our neighborhoods to bring us down, to keep us down. Always a goal of Crips to make a substantial amount of money and to open up your own business, whether it be a smoke shop, a liquor store, or a foods place, or whatever. That was the goal, to find a way to take that money and make it somewhat as legal as you can. The LA riots happened in 92. I was 18 years old at that time. The LA riots was a result of the Rodney King verdict. Those 4 officers that were clearly guilty as hell on video beating Rodney King half to death when they were found innocent, that just sparked something in the community. I didn't never think I would see nothing like that.
They're Maoists. America KKK on justice. They were Maoists, dude.
Ground zero of the riots happened 5 blocks from my house. I was sitting at home watching the news. I seen the news. So we jump in the car, we drive up to the riots. By this time, you got hundreds and hundreds of people starting to migrate to Florence and Normandy. So at this point, it just kicked off. It was spreading like wildfire. Every car that came through the intersection that had a white person in it was getting attacked. I saw news reporters getting beat up. I saw cameramen getting beat up, getting the cameras taken from them. And at that time, it really didn't matter what gang you were from, because now it's a black against white thing now. So it didn't matter if you was a Blood or a Crip or whatever you was. Even though it was such a messed up day, it's such a fucked up day, it was also a day to kind of rejoice, because that was the first time in a long time that you saw common enemies, Crips and Bloods and Mexican gangs, come together against this one common enemy, the LAPD. And so after days of rioting, some of the community leaders like Jim Brown, the football player, a couple of popular gang leaders from different gangs, from different areas, different.
That's the reason why no matter what happens, chat unites at the top of the hour, because there's a 3-minute ad break and everyone's like, all right, we're against the streamer now. But you don't have to be against me. You know, you can just join the subscribers and therefore no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. That's how it works. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
Sets had a meeting and decided that this was the perfect opportunity to try to bring a peace treaty, a truce between the gangs. Even though it was something bad that caused us to get to that level, it still was an opportunity for us to bring things together. The peace treaty lasted officially maybe a good couple weeks, and it kind of continued to dissolve as weeks and months went on.
9/11 was not what cleaned up New York City. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I was obviously joking. You think I think 9/11 cleaned up New York? Like, actually? That's so weird, dude. Some of my chatters are so strange.
To the point to where it didn't exist no more. But for that little short time, it was great to have it. When gangsta rap came out, it introduced a lot of Crips. And when NWA came out, which is the group that started gangster rap, Eazy-E, rest in peace, Eazy-E was known to be a Crip. And from him, you had other pioneer rappers that were from Crip neighborhoods. You had Snoop Dogg, you had Dub C, all these popular gang rappers that was in the neighborhoods representing their hoods that were blowing up on the mainstream. And so now you got people sitting at home watching MTV, 106 in Park. They're watching all these video shows, and they got these gang members doing rap videos with the blue rags and the 6'4s and the lowriders and wearing all the gang attire and the gang uniform, but they're actually artists making money on TV, and now it's being broadcast all over the world. Aside from the UK and the Netherlands, I've heard about Crips in China. I heard there's some Crips in Africa, which I've actually seen online, social media. People in Africa cripping and just loving this West Coast culture. And I think all these countries adapted on to these United States values and these United States ways just because of how it was glorified. Not really understanding the meaning of it. You know, that people lost their lives and people are killing. This is not something to play with.
I mean, when people do it in China, they're not also doing like gang violence, though. They're just looking at the cultural aspect of it, because all culture in America, I mean, listen, America's greatest export is our culture, and America's only culture is black culture. Crips in China call it Xi Jinping, more like Xi Sing Ping. Xi Sing Sing. Thank God they Crips in China and not Bloods. They living in Bina then. Bina. Wait, what?
In 1994, I went to Oklahoma. I got a football scholarship to go to Oklahoma to play football. That's pretty much really what saved me from being killed or anything else bad happening to me on these LA streets. Played football there for 2 years at a historically black college. In 1996, 97, I moved to Oklahoma City, and I started working at the Juvenile Detention Center. They needed a gang advisor, a gang trainer. So, of course, I was qualified for that. Just volunteering my time, talking to the kids and, you know, educating them on gangs and telling them because I had no idea Oklahoma had a gang problem. So I went and I sat down with the chief of police to see exactly, you know, where did he want me to go with this. I did 2 years in the school system. They came to me and asked me that I want to interested into transferring to the streets, basically running traffic, pulling people over, writing tickets, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, let me do that. I'll do that. See what that's like. Because I actually want to see how they dealt with drug dealers, with me being on the other side of the law. And all the complaints that
Bro went from one gang to the next. Like he went to the worst gang. He went to the more successful gang. Okay? That's crazy. He's like, yeah, I was a part of the Crips. I stayed blue. Exactly. He stayed blue. He's like, you know, honestly, I just upgraded a little bit because now they were like giving me a pension. And also I had no legal scrutiny.
I had, as a criminal, all the police brutality, all the mistreatment from the police. I got to witness that firsthand working with them. And a lot of times I would have to intervene on like, hold on, like, you know, it was a couple of times where they had to have that conversation with me. Look, either you with us or you with them. So even in the training in the police academy, I dealt with racism. I dealt with discrimination because a lot of those officers felt like, this dude is a criminal. This dude is from the streets. How in the hell are you guys gonna let him work with us? Blah, blah, blah. That's why even after I became a police officer and I moved back to California, I still ended up hooking back up with my old homies and old gang members, and I ended up going to jail even after being a police officer. I went to jail. It literally just feels
like this is so weird.
My experience with the LAPD, they still haven't found a way to deal with communities and cultures that they don't know nothing about. It's the same tactics, you know, dirty cops, bogus charges, planting drugs, mistreatment because of who you are or what you represent. It's the same.
By the way, Oklahoma, as we've talked about before on this broadcast, is a notoriously police department, somehow more than other police departments.
Thing, it hasn't stopped. But one way the police can bridge the gap with the community is
No, literally.
to continue to work with those that want to work with them. The big
No,
UA's example.
I didn't say racist. They are racist, of course. But he originally was a part of the. I thought he said he went to the. He joined the OKP, like a Oklahoma police department. I'm using race with a P.
Rolling 60s. Guys that like that are gang activists that are trying to do things to stop the gang violence and help kids in the community and bring some positivity in the community. The main thing is to save lives. And after you save lives, you want to create opportunities. I went to jail in Oklahoma for robbery. Since at that time, when I was out there, it was for a robbery that I did when I was living in Oklahoma. When I came back to California in 2006, I went to jail again in 2009 for another robbery. And they ended up finding about another robbery that I did, and they combined the cases. I ended up taking the 3-year deal. When I first got arrested, they took me down to the main LAPD headquarters, what they call the Parker Center. They transfer you the next day to the county facility. So I left the Parker Center that morning. They put me on the jail bus, took me to the county jail, which is known as the Twin Towers. You usually go into the tank. The tank is basically a holding area where a whole bunch of other gang members are at. And I'm talking about mixed in, Crips, Bloods, Mexicans, everybody. And that's like a box of dynamite waiting to explode.
Mexicans.
And
you know, the gang. Crips. You have the Crips, you have the Bloods, and then you have the Mexicans.
And sometimes you get put in those situations and the officers just leave you and they don't care. They don't, whatever happens in there, it happens. And you're going to always find somebody in there that's going to challenge you, especially if you're from a rival gang. You listen for the lingo. You listen to what they're saying. Or you might see people that you haven't seen since elementary and you lost contact with them. You wonder where they were at. Well, this is where they at. And so you find out that they from a Crip set. And so you guys just connect to one. Now, if it becomes a racial thing, Bloods and Crips, you know, they find a way to unite against whatever race they have to go against. You know, it can be some violence erupt in between the transportation into the different dorms or the different units. But for the most part, in the county jail, Crips was with Crips, Bloods with Bloods, or sometimes you get the general population where it's a mixed dorm. Now, don't get me wrong. If I went in there as a Menlo Crip or as a 60 Crip or 60 go in there and they run into some Hoovers, it's bad blood automatically. No matter, we're Crips and we're Crips, we're in the same unit, it don't matter. We need to settle this beef. So I might walk in here and a Hoover Crip might say, hey, you from Menlo? I need that fade.
If you went to jail, would you shave your head and go Nazi or go hardcore Muslim gang? I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Whichever one is more powerful in the prison, I guess. I mean, you got to join one. It's not even a question. Why are you guys throwing up question marks? This is like a very common, literally, what kind of question is that? You guys have never heard about this question before? I feel like this is like a normal. They ain't letting you with a name like Hasan. Dude, one of the fucking major players in the Aryan Brotherhood is Jewish. What are you talking about? Nah, dude. The Aryan Brotherhood is just the white gang, okay? I mean, they're Nazis, for sure. Don't make no mistake. They're definitely neo-Nazis, right? But, you know, a lot of dudes are just white. So they are under the Aryan Brotherhood automatically.
I need that fade. So that lets you know that at some point, you and this guy have to fight because both of y'all sets don't get along. Inside or outside of prison with Crippin, there's no different. The way you carry yourself on the streets is the same way that you expected to carry yourself in the prison, except at a higher level because it's a little more dangerous in prison than it is on the streets. The thing that made me change my life was my kids. When I took the scholarship,
Do all prisons have gangs? I mean, it depends, but like LA County and jails and prisons like that house a lot of inmates, yes. When I say not all, I was thinking of like Bernie Madoff. You know what I mean? The prison that he went to. Most prisons globally have gangs. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe if you're like a fucking, you know, a prisoner of the nanny state, brother, fucking SEC. In that case, maybe you're not going to one of them gang prisons.
Scholarship to the school, I was in the process of changing my life. I just didn't know it. But that was my start of changing my life. And when I started working with gangs and talking to the kids in the schools and at the juvenile jails, and I seen how I was getting through to them and how much they respected me from what I was telling them and trying to teach them, it just made me want to change. It just made me want to continue to do positive things. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I met somebody one day and they told me I had this look. They's like, you should get into acting. You should think about acting. So I started doing acting little gigs, doing extra roles. And so I've done several projects and been
This guy's done everything.
a part of several TV series and dramas and different things that have gotten my foot into the door of acting. So there's definitely some positivity that can happen from my past that was negative. Yeah.
Business Insider contacted the LAPD about White's claims of lack of support for marginalized communities and police corruption. The LAPD declined to comment on these specific allegations. Business Insider contacted the police academy White attended for comment, but did not get a response.